I was merely another cog in the massive machine of the Ottoman Empire, a silent servant in the grand court of the Sultan in Istanbul. My name? It doesn't matter. My days were filled with small, repetitive tasks, serving tea, polishing brass lamps, and ensuring the tapestries remained as vivid as the stories they told. Life was predictable, leaving no room for dreams, but at least it was safe. That is, until I was assigned to the Hall of Relics. They said the hall was the Sultan's pride, a hidden space accessible only to the most loyal. It was a sacred place, and my duties were simple: keep it clean and orderly. I was told never to touch anything directly, only to observe, record, and obey. It was an honor, they said, but one afternoon in that chamber was enough to understand it wasn't a trophy room, it was a prison. The artifacts stored there seemed alive. Not literally, of course, but there was a presence about them that made my skin prickle and the air in my lungs grow heavy. At the heart of the chamber, under a glass dome, were the golden shackles. At first glance, they gleamed like treasures, but upon closer inspection, their chains bore engravings, faces, perhaps, or twisted forms that seemed to shift under the flickering light of the candles. The chief guard warned me. The shackles must not be touched. Don't even look at them for too long. They belong to the Sultan, and to what he fears. His words intrigued me more than they frightened me. What kind of fear could compel such a powerful man to keep something so dreadful so close? Nights in the hall were long and lonely. As twilight fell, the noises would start. They weren't ordinary sounds like creaking doors or echoing footsteps. These were whispers, a low and guttural melody that seemed to rise from the walls, growing louder as the hours wore on. The first week, I thought it was my imagination. By the second, I began to hear my own name among the murmurs. Once, I encountered one of the older guards near the entrance, staring at the floor with a vacant expression. He was holding something in his hands, a worn, frayed bracelet of beads. I asked him about it, but he only muttered something about chains of the past that never break before hurriedly leaving. The next morning, I learned he had vanished. Something began to change within me. A dark curiosity grew stronger each day. I found myself staring at the shackles longer than I should, trying to decipher the faces etched into them. They seemed trapped in torment, but there was something else, a silent plea, a desperate cry for help. It was on a new moon night when the light was faintest and the whispers the loudest. I felt a force beyond my control, a compulsion that wasn't my own. I walked toward the shackles. I just wanted a closer look. My hands trembled as I lifted the glass dome. The air around me turned icy, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. I touched the shackles. Instantly, the room disappeared. I was enveloped by darkness, but I wasn't alone. Figures emerged, hunched, their skin like dried parchment. They moved slowly, dragging unseen chains that echoed metallic clinks in the void. Their voices were muddled, but one word was clear: betrayer. When I came to, I was lying on the floor of the hall. The glass dome was intact, but the shackles now glowed with an oppressive brilliance. The engravings had changed. One of the faces now resembled my own. The next day, I was summoned to the main courtyard. A new group of prisoners had been brought to the palace, bound by shackles identical to those in the hall. Their faces were blank, devoid of expression, but their eyes screamed. The chains gleamed under the sun, reflecting grotesque shapes that seemed to smile, as if savoring the agony of those bound to them. Today, as I recount this tale, my time in the hall has ended, not as punishment but by choice. I asked to leave. The only thing I carry with me now is regret and the weight of what I saw. I went too far. If you were in my place, would you have resisted? I doubt it.
In the year of our Lord, 1374, the Abbey of St. Aurelius rested on the edge of the known world, perched upon the mist-shrouded hills of Germania. It was a place of severity, where the only permitted sound was the monks' chants echoing through cold stone corridors. Time there was not marked by the sun, forever veiled in clouds, but by the tolling of bells announcing the divine office. I am Brother Camradus, a scribe. My life is devoted to transcribing the scriptures, adorning manuscripts with arabesques of gold and celestial blue. My days follow a rigid cycle. At dawn, prayer. At midday, work. At dusk, more prayer. And at night, solitary vigils in the scriptorium. I found comfort in this unchanging rhythm until I was tasked with restoring the book. When the abbot handed me the volume, I knew immediately it was no ordinary text. Its cover was blackened leather, marked with symbols I did not recognize, letters that seemed to writhe under the light. The parchment inside was fragile, but the abbot, his eyes stern, insisted it was my duty to restore it. "It is a sacred relic," he said in a voice as cold as the stone walls around us. I dared not ask more, though curiosity burned within me like embers beneath ash. The first night was uneventful. I cleaned the pages, removing mold that seemed to writhe under my touch. It was meticulous work, and at first, nothing unusual occurred. But on the second night, I heard them. Voices. Low, murmured, in languages I had never studied. They were faint, like the wind sighing through the cracks in the scriptorium walls. At first, I dismissed them as my imagination, or perhaps echoes of distant chants. But the voices grew clearer, each syllable pulsing as if spoken directly into my ear. "Comrades, listen." No, I wasn't mistaken. They knew my name. For weeks, I continued my work, growing more absorbed each day. The voices accompanied me constantly. At first, I begged the Lord to deliver me from their torment, but over time, I began to listen, hesitantly at first, then with unsettling eagerness. They whispered secrets, phrases that pulled at my mind like a hook dragging a fish from the depths. As the days passed, I noticed changes in the abbey. The air grew heavier, damp with a chill that made each breath a labor. My brothers, once steadfast, began to falter, or was it fear I saw in their eyes? One of them, Brother Johannes, was found kneeling before the altar, his gaze empty, muttering incoherent words until his voice finally gave out. The abbot, strangely, said nothing. His eyes, however, bore into me with a mixture of expectation and dread. It was on the final night that I understood. I had restored the book's last page. As I smoothed the parchment, it felt newly alive, as if my touch had awakened it. A symbol glowed, a star with 8 points entwined by serpents. The voices rose in a chorus, no longer whispering. They commanded, "Read." My hands, once so steady, trembled, yet I obeyed. I made the mistake of gazing upon the words etched into the page. I cannot describe them fully. They were not mere letters, but living things writhing under my scrutiny. As I spoke them aloud, I felt something leave me, a familiar warmth drained from my body, replaced by a cold void. And then I saw my brothers consumed by shadows that slithered like worms. I saw the abbot on his knees, his eyes darkened to embers as a black veil swallowed his face. I saw the abbey dissolve, melting like wax beneath an invisible flame. But worse than seeing was feeling. I felt that the voices were something far older than the world itself, something that had always lingered, waiting for a curious, foolish soul to release it. Now, you might wonder, if he's narrating, how can he no longer be alive? The answer is simple, though it's better if you do not fully grasp it. I am an echo, nothing more. The words you hear now are like those of the book, alive, but empty of the one who spoke them. If you hear my voice, it is because the book has found you. It needs someone to continue its work. It calls.
My name is Miklos, and my life, until that cursed night, was as mundane as that of any travelling merchant crossing the Hungarian countryside. I would wake to the crowing of roosters and the scent of fresh bread at the village markets. My horse, Gibber, was my only loyal companion, as he pulled my wooden cart filled with fabrics, trinkets, and baubles I sold to both nobles and peasants. It was late summer in 1610, and the nights carried the fragrance of ripe grapes and an air of heavy change I couldn't quite decipher. I was in the region of Captis, a village known for the castle atop the hill, the home of Countess Elizabeth. Rumors about her were plentiful, as always. Some said she was a woman of indescribable beauty. Others whispered she harbored unspeakable secrets within those stone walls. I paid no mind to the stories. To me, it was just a castle, and she was merely someone who never bought my wares. But that afternoon, a storm drove me down winding paths. My cart got stuck in the mud, forcing me to seek shelter in the village. The locals seemed uneasy, but one figure stood out, an old hunched man wrapped in a tattered cloak, whispering to me in the market. "Go to the castle. The storm won't touch you there," he said. I hesitated, but when I saw the villagers retreating hurriedly, I decided to climb the hill. Curiosity, more than need, pushed me forward. I arrived at the castle as night fell. Its gates stood open, as if expecting me. Inside, the air was thick and stifling, imbued with an odor I couldn't place. Servants led me to the grand hall where the Countess was meant to receive me, but she never appeared. Instead, a pale young man escorted me to a room where I could spend the night. That's where I first saw it, a mask. It rested in the corner of the room, adorned with dark metal and intricate carvings of roses and thorns. It was beautiful, but something was off. The candlelight seemed unable to reach its surface, as if it absorbed all light. I was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. "Do not touch the mask." That was all the young man said before leaving the room. But how could I resist? When I held it, a coldness that seemed to rise from the depths of the earth seeped into my hands. An almost imperceptible vibration coursed through me, and before I realized it, I had placed it on my face. That's when it all began. At first, everything seemed normal, until I heard footsteps in the hallway. I thought it was the young man returning, but the steps were slow, dragging, as though something heavier than a person moved. When I opened the door, no one was there. Only the dark corridor and the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. I returned to the room, but my mind was assaulted by visions that weren't my own. A hall bathed in crimson, bodies twisted in grotesque poses, eyes pleading yet forever unblinking. Somehow, I knew these things had happened within those castle walls. The mask felt alive, pulsing against my skin. I tried to remove it, but it wouldn't budge. My vision darkened, and when I regained awareness, I was in a different hall, standing before a cracked mirror. My reflection was there, but the face staring back at me was hers, Countess Elizabeth. I don't know how to describe what I saw. There was no beauty, only something cold, hollow, quivering. Her hands, my hands, held a golden dagger, its blade tarnished with the color of autumn leaves. Voices whispered in my mind, "Why resist? You're hungry too." I fled. The mask fell from my face as though discarding me. I ran out of the castle, but the path stretched endlessly, branches clawing at me like skeletal fingers. When I finally reached the village, the storm had passed, but it was eerily empty. At dawn, I found a farmer who looked at me with wide, fearful eyes. "You went to the castle. You shouldn't be here." I never went back. I've never truly known if what I experienced was real or some fevered nightmare. But there's something I must ask you, listener. Have you ever felt as though something watches you through a mirror? Because sometimes I still see her face. I don't know if it's a warning or a promise that we'll meet again someday.